Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of North Coast Journal Preview, where we take a look at the stories being covered in this week's edition of the North Coast Journal. I'm your host, Dave Frank, in the Access Humboldt studio, and we're joined here by Thad Greenson, the news editor of the North Coast Journal, and Jennifer Fumiko Cahill, who is the arts and features editor. Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks a lot. Let's dive right in. Thad, what's on the cover of this week's North Coast Journal?
This week's cover story is by Assistant Editor Kim Weir, and it is about the challenges facing local police agencies to recruit and retain officers. And so this has long been a problem on the North Coast, and the story is really kind of specifically looking at the kind of ripple effects of a raise given by the Mendocino County Board of Supervisors to its sheriff's deputies. Late last year, they passed a 30% raise over 3 years, so a really substantial raise in an effort to kind of recruit and retain officers there, because they had been kind of seeing the same thing where it was a struggle to stay fully staffed, and they would recruit folks from out of the area. They'd come for a couple years, and as soon as they had a little bit of experience, they would go to kind of a big city police agency that could pay more. So Mendocino really put a premium on, we are going to invest heavily in raising the compensation levels. And they did it actually not just for their officers, but across all county government. So they made a huge financial commitment. They're paying $5 million more this year in employee expenses than last year. But they felt like it was worth it to retain all employees, especially officers.
So that wasn't just random, right? That was the result of a study? Is that?
Yeah, so they did a compensation study that looked at, again, kind of all employees at all levels of government as they compared to kind of their counterparts across California. And they've stated the goal, they're not getting there this year with this set of raises, but that they want to bring all of their employees to at least 90% of the state average. To be more competitive.
And so today I'll be announcing that I will be leaving my post to work for the county of Mendocino.
You could just commute down there.
I know, it's not that far. Yeah. It's fine.
Well, I did recall hearing that there was some kind of pay freeze in the past, and this might be some kind of accelerated catch-up. Is that right? Yeah,
I mean, it more than catches them up. They took actually a mandatory pay cut kind of at the time of the recession in 2008 or 2009 of 10%. And so they've had COLA increases, cost of living increases since, but they haven't had a substantial raise since. So there is a degree of catch up. And, there's a shortage, a nationwide shortage and an acute shortage of police officers in California, which the story also delves into is kind of the reasons why fewer people are wanting to get into policing. There's a number of theories about that. But kind of
the Ferguson effect.
The Ferguson effect is what some people cite, yeah, and so that's the idea that these high-profile incidents have in which officers' conduct has really come into question, sometimes with horrible impacts on communities, and it's had this deleterious effect where fewer people want to associate themselves with policing or get into policing.
Mm-hmm. So the impact on our community then from this increase from our neighboring county is probably pressure also.
Yeah, so I mean, certainly the Humboldt County Sheriff's Office, so we were aware of the raise when it was passed by Mendocino, and we thought, oh, this is going to be really interesting, could have these ripple effects, this is something we should start looking into. And then a few weeks ago, Humboldt County Sheriff William Hansel sent out a statement. It's pretty rare that the Sheriff's Office sends out kind of an official statement from the sheriff, and they send out plenty of press releases about incidents, but this was kind of this big statement to the community. And he was really saying, look, we need to prioritize better funding the Sheriff's Office and raising salaries for deputies. And he noted they're down 17 deputies right now, which is about like 15% of their deputies. So they have folks working 12-hour shifts, working on their days off, and he's just saying it's really not sustainable, and we need to find kind of broader community solutions to get more people into policing.
The article references a sort of extraordinary steps they've also had to take for dispatchers too.
That was the Eureka Police Department, and which has taken both with police officers and dispatchers has taken some really proactive steps. So with dispatchers, they came up with this program that essentially allows them to come on board before they've completed the full training regimen. So they kind of come on an assistant capacity and then work up to being a full-time dispatcher. And so one of the barriers with all these law enforcement positions is that there's not only like a long background check period,
Right.
but then there's also a really long, prolonged training period when you can't officially be on duty, whether as a dispatcher or an officer. So they did that for dispatchers, and then they also realized, EPD also realized some time ago that they were kind of constantly down 5 officers on average, and they just had these vacant positions that they're constantly struggling to fill. And so actually Chief Steve Watson decided, why don't we just eliminate those positions and spread that salary savings across the entire department to give everybody raises. So they were able to give all their officers about 5% raises, which he feels like has helped with retention. And he had some interesting ideas also on the retention side, and I think the recruitment side too, of just recognizing that, yeah, he believes that there is this Ferguson effect, but that there's also these other sacrifices officers make in just kind of quality of life, and they face kind of incredible stresses on the job. They're dealing with all these societal ills every day, and so Watson is really focused on, let's make EPD as good a place to work as we can through kind of making sure we have a familial atmosphere, but then also offering kind of this wellness program to make sure they're taking care of their officers, and officers feel taken care of there and want to stay there.
Was there something you wanted to mention about how this story came together?
Well, I talked a little bit about that, of just kind of us seeing it develop,
Yeah.
of learning of this pay raise that the Mendocino deputies got, kind of wondering about how that might impact locally, and then seeing Sheriff Hansel's statement, which is kind of when we jumped on really reporting it out. I think the thing that I would add is, it's been interesting to see through various law enforcement officers' eyes, like what they see as the reason that fewer people are coming into the field. And so a number of them cited the Ferguson effect. Some of them cited just having the more, I guess, the less like hard crime work that police officers do nowadays, and that they spend a lot of time, dealing with homeless issues, dealing with drug addiction issues, and things that maybe aren't as exciting or as rewarding as cops and robbers.
It's interesting. Kim came into my office at one point when I was, reading through the draft. She's sort of looking at me, waiting so she can mess with it again. But she was saying to me, because she's been a reporter and working in news in Humboldt County for how long?
20 plus years.
20 plus years.
Yeah.
And she has a terrifying institutional memory. So she'll, you'll say like, oh, I ran into so-and-so. And she'll be like, wasn't he involved with something 100 years ago that nobody else remembers? And she brought up that, some of the police officers that she talked to, including the guy in Mendocino, what was his name again?
Van Patten, Captain Van Patten.
She was sort of rattling off these different cases that these people have worked that have been horrifying. Things that, would haunt you the rest of your life.
Right.
And so, they're coming from a place of understanding the kinds of stress that they're talking about, the kinds of things that would keep people from deciding to enter, a career in law enforcement. And, what do we know? We decided to go into journalism. Like a couple of idiots.
Well, but on that note, I've always found it interesting. I mean, that, in the course of reporting in Humboldt County, I've talked to lots and lots of police officers. And when the topic has come up, most of them have said they would not want their kids to go into the profession. I think...
and Van Patten...
Yeah, and he mentions that in the story too, yeah. And so, I think that part of the problem is just policing is, increasingly a tremendously difficult job with a lot of scrutiny and a lot of stress and a lot of impacts on one's personal life. And we just have not seen kind of compensation increase accordingly. My father was very fond of saying that the highest paid positions in society should be police officers, doctors, and teachers. Yeah. And that would ensure kind of you get the best people in those positions, and you reward them for the hard work that they do and the impact they have on a community. And I don't think, with teachers and police officers anyway, we haven't gotten there.
Yeah. Well, at least you're ending it on a positive by sort of valuing the contribution they make to the community. Because I think that was in the article too, that that is one of the draws of the position, is that you are making a positive contribution to the community. And in fact, in a rural community or a smaller community like ours, people who do go into this field get a broad set of skills rather than a larger place where it's more compartmentalized responsibilities. So there is some draw to, in theory, to come into work for the community here.
Absolutely.
Well, hopefully people will pick it up and learn more about this in this edition. What about you, Jennifer? What's going on in the arts and features beat?
You know, I actually had a story ready to go on Monday, and I was like, oh, look at me, I'm ahead of, well, I wasn't actually ahead of deadline, but I was ahead of what I thought I was. I didn't think I was going to be this late. But and then on Monday, we got this press release from Food for People about this collaboration that they're doing with the cider company. Normally, I see something about breweries or, you know, and collaborations, and I'm like, okay, this is the 100th one of these that I've seen. But Food for People got together with Humboldt Cider Company, and they made a beautiful baby cider together. I don't know if do you have apple trees?
My girlfriend does, I don't.
Yeah. Do you have apples at your house?
Prolific.
Oh my God.
I had no idea until
Right.
I got a property with apple trees.
Yeah.
And
This
they
year,
just keep coming.
it was like a terrifying apple tsunami coming at all of us. And actually, my father-in-law called Food for People and said, I have a ton of apples. Because Food for People does this thing where they work with farmers and farmers markets and things like that, and even just backyard gardeners, and they will come and get your excess produce, things that
Which is great.
It's fantastic. Sometimes the farmers can't move, a zillion tons of kale this week before it, goes bad. And so it doesn't matter that it's still good, it's ready to go, it's, wonderful fresh produce. They can't move it fast enough, so when a bumper crop comes, Food for People is there. But 16,000 pounds of apples is too many apples even for Food for People to move. They have 17 different food pantries around the county, and people can come in, they get nutrition advice, people are helping them with getting the groceries they need for families, and et cetera. It's fantastic, but as we all know, if you've got somebody in your life with a fruit tree, you can only eat so many apples. And apple pies and apple jam and everything else. My God, it's like the Bubba Shrimp thing, but with apples. So anyway, they got together with Humboldt Cider Company, and Humboldt Cider Company, which normally does a ton at a time of apples, made about a half-ton batch of this apple cider, which is called Cider for People.
Nice.
And it is a mixed bag of apples. So it's everything that got gleaned. Some of it is ugly apples. Some of it, when you pick up an apple and you're like, this is too gnarly.
Right.
God does not love this piece of fruit. Yeah. So anyway, they chose the unlovely apples, the excess apples, all the apples that even they could not move in their storehouses. And they've made this stuff. And it took 24 days to ferment. It took 8 hours of pressing through Humboldt Cider's crazy setup at Redwood Acres, and it's going to be for sale in their tap room, which is it's over in downtown Eureka. Is it 512 F Street?
Yeah.
I know that it's close enough for you to go and get a drink there and then hobble back to our offices.
You figure that part out.
That's not an invitation, though.
It's not an invitation. Don't hobble back to our offices. You don't want to be drunk in our office. We'll just news about you. But it's a really great collaboration, and February 4th is when they are going to release it at their fundraiser party.
Oh, cool.
And if you go down there, no matter what you get on the 4th, I better make sure it's really the 4th. Imagine if I was wrong and everybody went down there and said, I was promised cider.
Trust but verify.
I know, trust but verify. It is February 4th.
Okay, good.
If you go down there, everything that you buy that night is going to be 10% benefiting Food for People.
That's really great.
And then after that, if you come back and get the Cider for People, it's 17% of the profits go to Food for People.
Which is a great cause.
Yeah, it's really great. And one of the cool things about it was I got to talk to a young woman named Allison Kenny. And I can't remember if I told you about the bizarre things that they've been donated. And we were,
you did.
we were talking about all the things they get in their collections. And, I don't want to make anybody feel bad, but whoever you are that donated the wine into the food donation bin, they don't take wine, but I respect the move. all kinds of people
Heart
are...
was in the right place.
Yeah, exactly.
Similarly with the bag of weed, right?
Oh, no.
We don't know if that's true or if that's a legend,
Okay.
but
It's a food for people legend.
yeah. But honestly, is there any organization in Humboldt County that does not have some sort of office legend about a bag of weed? Probably not.
The full spectrum.
But
And if you put out a donation bin in Humboldt County, I mean,
somebody's going to drop weed in
Yeah.
there. Somebody's just. But
Oh
but
my
it's very
goodness.
cool. She got this idea. So she got this idea from a Seattle brewery where they work with it's called Seattle Brewing Company, and they work with a organization that grows orchards in urban environments.
Oh, nice.
And it's called City Fruit. And she took this idea and ran with it in Humboldt, and it's just worked out gangbusters so far. So what I'm hoping is that this will become an every year thing,
This is awesome.
right? And now I'm like, what else? What else should we be making with gleaned food?
kale salad for the people.
Kale salad for the people.
Send ideas to Food for People.
If you have an industrial kitchen and you're ready to, like, I don't know, package green smoothies or something, you should reach out because they get a lot of greens.
Well, awesome, Jennifer. Thank you very much. This was great. Hopefully you guys pick up the North Coast Journal. It's on stands now. Stay informed. Until next time, thank you, Dad and Jennifer.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Take care.
thank you.